Hello everybody and welcome to another Basing Techniques episode. This is an unusual one because we're going to work on movement trays and individual figures. And you can see I think the emphasis is going to be on the cut leaves. You can see those scattered around here. But we're also going to work on some grass tufts. We're going to sort of retroactively put those here on the warrior sons. This is actually part of an army painting video, but when you get to an entire army, sometimes basing changes or evolves. The first evolution was actually using the Green Stuff World texture rollers. And then we wanted to use, again, these are the leaf cutters. There's a bunch of different ones. These will be good enough for right now. You can see there's a couple of different sizes here at work. But we want to do that to our tray of crossbowmen. Now this was a unit that was painted in a live session not all that long ago. I'll include a link in the description so you can head on over to that. But I definitely, after just thinking about it, I thought, well, maybe I am going to add some of these fall grass tufts here and maybe even fall flowers here. Not sure. Maybe, maybe not. And then if needed, I thought we'd maybe play with some of these. And the idea is just to, this is what sort of temple part of the base, just see what we can do with some of these secret weapon weathering powders. And you've seen me use this before, sand and gravel glue. It's from MIG Ammo. And the reason why I wanted to do this as a separate episode is basing, especially say here on the Warrior Sons, it's to keep it from being 400 hours long. It's just, well, here we're going to throw some leaves on there and it's really truncated. I haven't done any session where it's just strictly those leaves. So that's what we're going to do here. Now this actually happens to be, these are from Warlord Games here. Green Stuff World also sells these. You can get a Hangar 18. It's a lot of places you can get the tufts. I'm still going to do my own special episode on making tufts now that I actually have more of the 6mm grass. So that's the key to making these actually. It's really easy to find 2 and 3 and 4mm. 6mm grass, really hard to find. And what we'll do is we're going to be cutting those leaves right here to get them to be more like this. That's a little bit more usable form. Lots of nice different colors there. So what we'll do is we'll set everything up here. First thing we'll do is we'll chop up some leaves. It's not terribly complicated. We'll just describe that. From there, what we'll do is we'll work on the individual figures, throwing in some of these, and we'll determine, do we actually want these or not? So again, this is usually part of an army painting thing, but basing is also important outside of that. And I thought this could be interesting for people to see that sort of internal discussion. So we'll be right back with that. So let's chop up some leaves here. Now these leaves are kind of old. They've been around for a while. Now, just experience has now told me what you really want to do is press these immediately, and sooner rather than later you want to do the leaf punching aspect, because once these get really dry and crispy you get a lot of breakage. Not that that's a horrible thing, because even this kind of, you can almost take a mortar and pesto, see that right there, those crumbles? Well, that's perfect ground cover anyway. It's still going to have the same leaf texture, so you got those little veins in there. So even if it breaks up a little bit and it's not a perfect leaf, that's okay. Especially if it's full foliage, because it's just going to fall on the ground, get stomped on. I know I was just sweeping up leaves that have been laying around since the fall, and it was just kind of a pile of gunk at this point. There's one that's a little bit flatter. We'll use the larger leaf cutter here so you can get a better handle on how that works. And you can see how it goes all the way through here. And you want to have something underneath it that's going to catch your leaves. So there we go, 3 punched leaves. We're obviously not going to get too many out of this leaf, but I try and go for where the veins in the leaf are, because then it'll actually show up in your cut leaves. So look at that, that's really That is nice. Now this is a really flat leaf, so it's going to be really easy to do this. And you just kind of get your leaf in there, pop away. So I can even rip this away, maybe even get a couple of more pops out of that. Let's do, now this one's a little bit on the crinkly side. I suppose I could actually iron these. Could put a little bit of moisture back into them too. Ah, that's something I got to think about. I don't even know if we still have an iron. I think we do. But we're just gonna see, even with as crinkly as that was and as dried as that leaf is, still getting some nice cut leaves here. So this is generally the thing that I got to really rush through just for time. And I just realized all of a sudden, yeah, I've done blog posts that really dive into this, but I've never actually done a video that really just takes this to a different degree. Now these are really fun. We collect leaves all year long. We collect green ones too. And you say, what the heck do you want green ones for? Well, what if you want to do live foliage? What if you got a tree and you want to put actual leaves on it? Well, that's what the green ones are for. Because at first I didn't think I'd need green leaves either. And then I realized, oh, was I ever wrong? Now you can see here, we're getting into leaves that are more of this color. Your red maples here. Or maybe even a Japanese maple. Now this has a little bit of crinkled stuff that's kind of getting in my way. I really want to get at that nice juicy vein of green there. I just popped a couple of leaves right through that. Oh, here's another one right here. This is going to be good. Just try and get that centered in there. Look at that. I'm actually going to get rid of this. So hopefully I can get a couple more out of there. And as I said, it's easier. The flatter this is, the easier it's going to be. So I'm just going to break some of that away. Gives me access to another fresh part of the leaf here. So now my container is not terribly large, so some of them kind of don't all go into the container. But I'm looking at this. Yeah, it's interesting. That goes all the way through. It's a really interesting device. And I've used it on paper, because at first I thought, well, leaves, what do I need leaves for? I'm just going to take some decent textured paper and just maybe throw some washes on it or whatever, get some paint on there, and I'll just pop that. And it worked, but it just didn't have that vein texture in it. Did not have that at all, and the comparison there really was no comparison. Definitely no comparison. So here I'm just gonna clean this out so that I can get to this. Now this leaf is pretty crispy for as flat as it is. So I have to worry or just think about, well, the potential breakage there. And I got myself, see, whole piece just broke off right in there. That's why I say, you might want to do it sooner rather than later. Okay, now we've been popping a whole bunch of bigger ones. Let's do some of these smaller ones. Let's get rid of that stem. And let's see what we get. Alright, and it looks like I get 4 out of this one as opposed to 3 from the bigger one. I haven't used this one very much, so this is interesting. And at first I thought, well, why would I want different scales of leaves? It didn't really make much sense until I realized, well, some of the figures that I was working on, let's say some that are more true scale, those gigantic leaves, well, if they look like sycamore leaves, or was it sassafras trees have really giant leaves? Basically, trees that have really big leaves that are almost the size of your head. Well, it makes sense that those, they use the larger leaves, but especially dark sword figures that are true scale, sometimes even maybe bolt action historical figures, all of a sudden those started to look out of place. Just too big. I said, okay, now since these are in a different spot, maybe I'm gonna rip away some of this, see if I can't get away with just popping a few more leaves out of this here. There. Yep, still got a few small ones. Now again, they've scattered across my board here, but then again, it's my board. I could conceivably pick up this board and just dump the board into here. So they were getting a nice little collection. See, sometimes a big old piece like that breaks off, no big deal, but see, we got a nice variety of colors and shapes in there. So I think we're pretty good now on our cut leaves. And like I said, there's got to be at least 10 of these now. There's oak leaves, maple leaves, like identifiable species, elm leaves. I'd say go ahead and get those now. Here, I've got, so here's my green leaves. These are my summer leaves. What the heck, I'm just gonna maybe stock up some of my green leaves here while we're thinking about it before this leaf ain't getting any younger. And I want to get some small green leaves here, because I think for some of my Lord of the Rings stuff and some of the upcoming maybe Dark Sword videos, I'm going to want to get more of these small little leaves here. So again, I'm going to break away my extra stuff here. Snap it away so you can see the vein is still even intact in there. So that's, when you hear it really crunching, that's what it's trying to cut through. But as I said, if you can preserve at least some of that, it's well worth it. It really is. You know, it's just, I'll pop some of these smaller ones here. Then I'm going to do some bigger ones over here. I'm just going to, again, pull that away. And this will be it for the leaf cutting section. And after a while, you can really you start doing it fast. Let's get rid of that extra, and we've got just enough space, it looks like, to get a few more cuts. One more. Alright, so now I've got a few more green leaves in here that I can use for summertime style foliage. So the next thing we're going to tackle, and this is the part where there's more of a question mark, and we're going to have to see, is this what we really want to use? So we're going to take our unit next. I'm going to get some of these off to the side, just out of the way so they don't get knocked over. Bring up our unit, and we'll see. Obviously, spots like here, definitely good for a tuft. On some of the figure bases, that's going to be a little more difficult. So maybe, and now we can cut the tufts also, so we'll do some of that. We'll be right back with that. I think it's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. So I think we'll give color, that much more color to this. So I'll explain that when we get to it, and we'll be right there in a second. So it's decision time now, and we got to decide a couple of things. The biggest is, do we want to use these flowers? Now there's another reason why I thought of using those, because you know, we've got this unit of the warrior sons with the rainbow cloaks and all that kind of stuff going on. So maybe they might work there and actually give that a little extra color too. So let's see what we want to do with this. I think we're just going to get right in here with this. So I'm going to take a tuft like that. Now you have to manipulate these sometimes. Sometimes you got to manipulate them a little bit, especially if you want them to be the right size. Now I always have with me some of my little T-shaped pins here. And let's see, do we want one? There. And I usually have a little bit of glue with me. I'm just going to double check and make sure this glue is actually flowing here, because sometimes you find out that the glue is actually a little bit stopped up or something like that, and then you have a glue volcano, and those are actually worse than real volcanoes. let's check this out here. I prefer to throw that down over here. So I'm going to get that where you can see it. So we're going to go here, and then what I'll do is I'll have the leaves sort of surrounded a little bit. So we're going to go, see, we spearfished our little flower tuft there. What that lets me do now is sort of smash it down and spread it out a little bit. So that went from kind of a uniform height. See how those are all just the all exact same height? See, now this has different height to it. And maybe on this whole entire movement tray, we get a couple of these. In fact, I might throw one here on this guy's foot, so I'm going to move the tray. We need another small one here. Sometimes these things fracture very naturally, sometimes not, and sometimes they are sticky and sometimes they're not. That one in particular happens to be really sticky. But this is a nice little small tuft here. And I'm just going to get some glue out there. Again, start with a little and then you add more. Don't start with a lot because you can't make less. Oh, there's another painting parable. Well, that's a basing parable, I guess. And I'm actually going to do something here. I'm going to cut that to make it a little more even and actually a little bit shorter. And I'm going to try to do the same thing I did on the other one. Get you back around here. So it's just supposed to look like these kind of fall wildflowers. The winter is coming. It's not summer anymore. That's why I didn't want to use the yellow flowers, because that seems a little bit too much like spring. So I'll just pop him back here into the tray. Okay, yeah. I think back here is not a bad spot. Maybe one over there. And I'm eyeing this piece right here. So there's a little bit of glue. And now I have to think, do I want to cut off some of the bottom of this thing? I might just do it just like the other one to sort of level that out. And we'll just get him stuck in there and tamp him down. So that, yeah, that's starting to add some. So we've got 3 on there so far. Like I said, I don't want to go too nuts with that because I want my other grass tufts in here too. Like these guys. Now these, I think the sticky stuff is okay on these. Sometimes, again, the sticky stuff will work, and sometimes it just really doesn't. Alright. So there's a tuft there. Again, trying not to get too berserk with the grass tufts, but I'm going to throw one in here. One right in here. Going to do the thing with the pin. Because I also have to think, well, these guys need to get back into the tray. And if they have to get past the big blob of grass, that's not going to work so well either. Now, which one of these guys is okay with having a tuft of grass? I might just throw one right there. So it's almost like the grass has popped up through the broken marble here. Alright, let's see if we can get you right there. Again, tamp it down. And there it is. Do I really want to put any more on here? Might throw one on here somewhere. I'm going to go next to his foot, but let's see what happens when we cut one of these. Let's see if we can cut this just about in half. Makes it a whole bunch smaller. Makes it a little more difficult to handle, but and this time I might actually need to get some super glue in there. Hopefully that holds, but see, we got a little bit, you know, I always like to put them by their feet. Also trying to make see a little connect the dots here. There's a reason that one clump sort of attracts another clump. It's like gravity for tree clumps or grass clumps there. So the idea is that I'm filling up these ground areas with a little more of the tufts and less of the leaves, and then the leaves can go on top of our stones. Maybe it gives you two levels to look at with the stones instead of just stones. Now we're going to go back to this unit here. Now this could be more complicated, trying to find again a place where those could go. Maybe we can stick one right in here. So I'm going to see if I can. Yeah, I'm just going to, and this is actually going to go on top of the stones a little bit here. So hopefully you can see that. It's going to be right here. I'm going to move this guy out of my way because his sword keeps getting hit. So here, I'm going to make sure that, again, my glue is free and open here and not just going to geyser all over the place, because that is no fun when that happens. And I'm actually going to cut off the bottom part of this here. And I'm going to stick that there. Just try and get this thing to stay. It can be a little tricky at first. There we go. That's where we want it. You just have to let the glue do its thing. So that violet, that purple there, that's going to add a little something. Maybe I can throw one right here. So I'm going to get him back on the tray real quick. I'll move this over, and I'm going to make sure that is, I think that's about as in focus as it's going to be. And here's another nice little clump that we're going to use. Again, it's stuck to my finger pretty darn good right now. Alright. Now let's see if we can't get it to stay on. Shove that in there. These just take a little more, because you can see this is more of a solid mass. To break that up takes a little more effort. But seeing as how it's violet right next to violet of the cloak, that's well worth it. So I'm glad I did this. Now here's another little caveat right here. Now I already had done some of this kind of basing on here. So maybe I try and sneak some of these flowers on here, but I got more of these units that I was going to paint anyways. So maybe I just do another one on, because this is before I knew about these roller, or this particular roller, I guess I should say. And this will happen to you too. You're just going to go, oh man, I wish I knew about that when I was working on my army project. So this, I thought too, might be another lesson within a lesson where you see kind of how do you retrofit things. So I'm going to try and squeeze one into here. Again, just trying to make sure that the glue doesn't get all over the place. Because if I have a miniature glued to the tray, that's not going to be very helpful at all. What I'm actually trying to do here is break this up before I even stick it on there. Now let's see if I can get this. See if I can get this in there. And actually get the stick. and still let a figure. Yep. So we've just added a few of those. Now let's go back and let's add this type of grass tuft. And now we got to decide, where can this go? Where can this go? I think I spy a spot right there. Yeah, sorry, my hand's in the way. I think that, yeah, that's better. And you can see I'm trying to spread it out using my little tool here. That's more like it. I got to add at least a couple more of those on here. At least one or two somewhere. Preferably along this back row. Now it looks like I've got kind of a small one already here. And I think that can go right over here. Yep, in this spot. Yeah, this is giving this one extra level of dimension. That I felt like it needed. I think it was just so much had been already done on that video. It was an excruciating one because of the rainbow cloaks and everything. So I think that's why we truncated it a little bit and didn't quite do so much with things like foliage or the clumps and everything else. Because it was getting pretty long. I'm just going to add this thing right over here. Like it's just growing up out of the, right in between the, just like grass does, in between bits and pieces of the sidewalk. I'm going to throw, actually, it would be really nice if I could get some flowers in this front section right there. I'm going to double check and see if that's a good plan. Yeah. Yeah. We're going to take a chance here, see if it works. I mean, if it doesn't, I just rip it right off of there. It's not a big deal. Again, gotta make sure that the glue is not going to go all over the place. So again, for whatever reason, the glue just wants to be all clumpy there. Here, let's get that out of harm's way. And I'm going to try and find my little flower tuft that I was going to throw there. I don't think that's it. There. So that's in place. Give it a smush. That's a highly technical basing term. Very advanced. Yeah. And the other thing too, see the bright green and the dark green. Essentially, I've got almost 3 colors of the rainbow cloaks represented in these stupid little flower tuft things here. And there's something else that I can do. Here, let me get some of this junk off the scissors. I can just all together snip away the grass. And almost just sort of keep the flowers here. And then use some sand and gravel glue. Let's do that. Here we go. Again, this is from MIG Ammo. Just gonna put some of that, and it's probably gonna be around maybe where the flowers are. So I'm gonna go like this. And then let's see, do I have a tweezers? I don't really see one around here. Let's see if I can use this. We'll just rest that right there. So it sort of continues that flower clump a little bit there. So here, let's drop another little bit of glue right there. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to snip some of these flowers off here. So now it is literally just the flowers and nothing else. None of the grass is on there. Spread that out and it becomes more of a ground cover. Now, unlike the super glue, that's not going to dry right away. So you have to let that do its thing. Now let's do some of that to our other unit here. In fact, yeah, I think I can even throw some whole clumps of flowers in here. I think I can. So let's just do that right here. Yep, and there's our explosion right there. That's the thing that we're hoping to avoid. I'm just going to get him out of there just to make sure. Now that fortunately hadn't gone backwards. And then this will soak up some of that glue. Yeah, that's a nice little platform for it right there. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Actually, just seeing this, I kind of like it here where it's just sort of snipped off of there. Oh, and by the way, if you want to make this stuff, this is another little basing experiment that I'm going to do. And that's to just basically take some sponges, drugstore or whatever, just store sponges, and use a cheese grater. Probably not one we would use for actual cheese. And then see if I can't make my own little foam like this. Just it's colored foam, that's all it is. Don't have to go crazy with it. Alright, I'm going to move this over here so you can hopefully see what we're doing. So what I did was I just took the exploded super glue and kind of dumped it out into a little vat somewhere else, or I can just sort of stick the tufts in there. I'm just going to double check and make sure I've got no super glue. Yep, no super glue sitting there. So you can go back in there. Where else? I'm going to try and do a little bit more with these flowers here. See if I can't just chop some of those away from the grass like this. Obviously you want to do it without slicing your fingers off too. Probably a good idea. I'm just speculating there. Oh yeah, and this is another thing too, and this is more of a aesthetic concern for later. So you say I got these all lined in black here, which it's kind of your first instinct, right? You just paint it. But actually this is that gray liner, which is fine until you put on a snowboard, and now you've got these really weird black outlined trays marching around on your board. Do I find something that's maybe a little bit more neutral, something that's a light gray or a light brown? Or, because I see some people, they're just straight up doing it white. Now, I don't know about that. That's I think that, to me, that would be a little bit too much there. But you may even see the colors of these trays change a little bit. It depends. Basically, once I start playing games with them, that's when I'll probably make that decision. Alright, so I'm going to say we're good on tufts. Don't want to go crazy and do too many of them. Yeah, I might put one down in here. Here, I think I got a flower tuft that might work down in there. So I'm just going to drop some glue on the end of it here. Like so. And you're going to have to forgive my hand. I'm going to tamp that down. And yes, okay. Yeah, that's nice. Adds a little bit of splash of color back there. So that's working. Now it's time for some leaves, and we got all kinds. We've got some reds and purples in here. We've got some more yellowish kind, and guess what? They sort of match our miniatures. They match the tufts that we just put down. So that's our next step here, is to throw down some leaves and see where we're at. It's time to add some leaves. And we're going to do that first on our crossbowmen. Now, I'm going to just grab some of the individual bases here and throw them on, and then we'll do the movement tray kind of separate from that. Now, you can see everybody's magnetized and numbered, so losing track is not an issue. But we got our sand and gravel glue here. Leaves, want to make sure that's where you can see it. And you can see we're going to pile that up here. And we're going to grab some leaves. And you see we're making a nice little pile of leaves there. I think when I first started using these, I would put 1 or 2 leaves down and think, wow, how great that is. And then I'd walk around and go, well, do you really have just 1 or 2 leaves laying around somewhere? Or is it more like this? We have a nice pile of them. So now I'm just going to put that, again, out of the way. Now here, I don't necessarily want to do too much. Again, this is the sand and gravel glue, but there's a few parts of that that didn't quite turn out the way I wanted. I want to get some along the back here. Now the glue does dry matte, so that's not really an issue, and if it is, you can always just sort of do a little bit of an oil wash over the top of it. I don't want to lose my lion iconography. That was the whole point of doing that, but there was a part there where maybe the texture roller didn't work super well. So again, we're getting some piles of leaves here. So we're going to separate these out. Get one more over here. I think you can, yeah, now you can see those pretty well. Get our next guy here. Do the same thing. And the idea is that this is why I left some of these larger areas. And the other thing too is, see, I can sort of add the glue afterwards, kind of after the fact. Now let's get onto the other side here. We don't have much going on there. Could have been a tuft there, but I was thinking more leaves like that. Here, let's grab another leaf here. You can see I'm just sort of using the brush to pull them out and slap them down. Move on to the next one here. This really could have gotten a grass tuft. And I'm actually going to make that adjustment right now while we're thinking about it. I am going to snip away some of this. So just bear with me for a second. Yeah, glad I did that. Makes a little, yeah, that was just too much of a gap there. The other thing, see what it does too is it gives a little extra dimension. It's something behind the foot there. And what I'm going to do now, I think you can see I'm sort of stacking up the glue over here because I want to have a nice big old pile there of leaves. What it does is it sort of anchors that tuft. It's almost like the leaves have blown up underneath it there. Now over here I'm not going to do a tuft. I'm just going to do some leaves. And that's it. Just some leaves over there. So here again we have something, it's a big old thing of nothing. Well, now we can add something in the form of poof, leaves. Nice little leaves. And it gives that stone a little splash of color that it just didn't have otherwise. And that's all I'm going to do. Not going to do any more on that one. So this one we already put a tuft by the foot. Which means over here we're just going to go with some leaves. Just gonna go with some leaves. See, here's just see one like a little isolated leaf. Gonna do the same thing over here. I need something on the other side to balance that out, and I'll do that right now. Here, get me one more. There. So see, there's 3 different colors there. One's like a yellow, one's a tan, and one is more of a dark red. We're almost, well, we're 2/3 of the way done with this. Again, some parts of the mold that didn't quite come out the way I wanted them to, I just sort of cover those up. And other places where it's all right, I'm just gonna maybe slap one little leaf there, and that's it. Because on these flat surfaces of the stone, the leaves would just sort of blow off. They would collect in these little gaps here, so that's why I'm sort of focused there. And I don't want to do, like I said, I don't want to do too many. And I certainly don't want to cover up that word there. But I never liked the cracks that they tried to sculpt into them, so I will cover that. Sometimes it takes a little while to get a hang of the leaves and handling them this way. Again, you could use the tweezers or whatever, but I really didn't feel like picking up a whole ton of individual leaves with the tweezers when this is actually a little more organic and natural. Now you do get the leaves that sort of fly off like that. That's just kind of the cost of doing business. But there's another little pile there. So again, it kind of gives this foot a little interest there. It's a splash of color there. It just does so many things, and it's not that hard. Not that hard at all. Your leaves are they certainly are much more cost efficient than the Tufts because they're sort of free. And the leaf cutter you only got to buy once, and then you just have it. So here is one more. But again, it's another one of these lion iconographies that we just don't want to annihilate with too many leaves. So I'm just going to put a few leaves on there. That's it for him. Here's our last one. And this one is a lot of just sort of boring stone, which will now be given some more interest with some nifty leaves. And it just doesn't take much to cover that up. So see, again, I'm trying to emphasize that the leaves are sort of congregating at the base of the grass tufts there. There we go. And that is it for the miniatures themselves. Now let's do our movement tray here. I'm going to get some of the extra junk off of there. And let's do the same principles on the tray that we did as far as trying to pile these up at the base of where they would more naturally collect as opposed to just sitting on top of things. I don't want to say they're underneath things, but they're definitely not so much on top of stuff. And see, this I really couldn't do it this delicately and take my time on the army painting thing because, well, you can see this is a whole video unto itself. Because this in the end is going to be, well, it's already about 40 minutes long. And we got a little ways to go here yet in our endeavor. And it was also supposed to be more of a conversation too, Because remember, this was about making changes to an entire army theme, which now means I'm going to have to, well, I'm painting more of the halberd units anyway, but you may not have that either, that option or that desire to just say, you know what, well, the basing is not quite going to match the rest of what I wanted to do, so I'll just paint a whole nother unit. I wanted to do that again because I wanted to paint them in oils and try that out for you. So it's going to be another army painting series. So I thought, okay, we're going to have more halberds anyway. That means I can try and put this type of basing on them. So see what I'm doing there? Just, again, focusing. Gotta get some of those leaves down in here too. It's not going to be easy. That one just shot across there. And when you first do this, it could drive you a little bit crazy. It might just stick to your thing and you might get a whole bunch of sand and gravel glue down in amongst your leaves, which you won't be happy about. So maybe you have a little different way of applying it or storing it or whatever. But for me, I'm just kind of used to doing this, so it's not a problem. So I'm just going to throw a little bit of glue over the top of that. And you can see the figures themselves not quite so labor intensive, but I knew this was going to be labor intensive because there's not just 12 spaces, there's all of this. Each one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those has 4 edges to it, and I've got to get these leaves around all 4 edges, so I knew that was going to be a little more involved. Here I got some more leaves. Sometimes I just pull them out dry and add the glue after the fact and let it just sort of soak in there. And you can see, well, what am I using? I'm using the same number 8 round craft brushes. Remember I was telling you that once they get beat up to where they're not even good as a filbert brush anymore, then they start to be used for basing. Well, this is one of those brushes. It's seen a little too much action. You can see it's kind of beat up now. I will say you can clean this stuff out with rubbing alcohol. That's how I clean these brushes anyway. You'll find that your brush is going to be really rubbery after using it for this, and that's why water just is not going to cut it. You're going to want to use that rubbing alcohol. So this is definitely, it's giving me that little extra splash of color, because that whole notion of a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. Well, it's not just for the miniature, it's for the basing. It's for everything. Alright, we just got a few more spaces here to do. Because I also wanted to talk to you about those weathering powders there. And I don't think, because you can apply them just dry, but to me, the way I always like to apply them is actually you hit them with some rubbing alcohol, and from there you can almost do like a little bit of a wash with them, and that gets them way down into the crevices. Let's see. Oh, we need some here. We don't have anything right here. Now, if I was doing this, obviously this can't go into a golden demon, but a painting contest where units are involved, this stuff would be painted more elaborately, more finely. I would have done more with, say, the sand and gravel to level things out. But it's really meant for showing army painting and for doing the battle reports. So I think that just, this could use just a leaf or two. And I think we've got everything taken care of. So what I need to do is let that set up and dry. We are going to get our sand and gravel glue here closed up. And what we'll do then is see if we can mess around with those weathering powders. And I'm going to use the previous unit there, the Warrior Sons, so that this stuff all has a nice long time to dry here. So that is not too shabby. I like we got leaves all over the place. We got some color with the tufts. So next up, we're going to try and do some experiments with these guys here. So we're going to use ourselves some rubbing alcohol here, along with our weathering powders. Now, well, I was hoping, here we go. So I've got just some old blister packs here, so I kind of rip these things off. And what I'm going to do is cut this down so that it's a little bit easier to squeeze into the palette area here. And we are going to essentially use this like water. So I'm just going to pour some out here. Doesn't take a whole bunch. There we go. So we got these couple here. Now I've used this all the time for weathering on vehicles and such. So we're just going to pour out a little bit here. Come on. I don't need a whole ton of it. This again is from Secret Weapon. So that's your dark earth. And now for some clay brown. Actually, I'm going to see if I can't get some of that back into here. There we go. Because we don't need that much. And it will get everywhere. I'll tell you that. Just be advised. That stuff can get all over the place. Any weathering powders can. So here's my alcohol here. I'm going to put it where you can see it. So now the palette camera is up in the right hand corner now. It's not in the left hand corner. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to try and get it to where you can see things here. Alright, just going to make sure we got enough light for you to see. Shove my little camera over it. Now this acts a lot like water, so watch what happens when it hits the weathering powder here. So you see what we're getting there? Now it also darkens it, just like anything. Say like your t-shirt, it gets wet, right? Or you're sweating, and it's dark, then it dries, and then it's lighter. Got to remember the same thing, because this is going to return to this once the rubbing alcohol dries away. And it's going to dry pretty darn fast. Now, where are we going to put this? We're going to put some of it here, and we're going to be kind of gentle with it. We're almost using it like a bit of a wash. We want it to collect down in our crevices here, because crevices always being dark, and see, I'm going to wipe some of that away. Crevices always being dark gets a little bit boring. So what we're trying to do is kind of take away that sort of monotonous thing of that's all just dark. And this is, I think it's the first time I've ever really done this type of thing. Because remember, in every video I try and do something brand new that I've never tried before to see does it add anything to it. And look, I'm even going to put some of that on my leaves, because it's almost like the leaves maybe are a little bit stained. Now let's not forget our other one here. This is the dark earth. Now see how much darker that gets, but you got to remember it is not going to dry that dark. Not going to dry that dark. But so I'm going to go in here into some of my soil there. Again, it's going to hit some of my leaves. But it's okay on these leaves because they are dry. So if you have leaves that just don't have a lot of color on them, this is one way of giving them a little extra color. Like I said, you could do an oil wash on them too, but this is about as fast drying as it gets because rubbing alcohol dries way faster than water does. So you can see I'm getting some nifty colors on my leaves, starting to get some color now on my stones. Spin this around here. Notice I'm not doing too much on the inside because, well, it's hard to see those guys. So we'll focus on our leaf there. Here, let's get some of the darker stuff here. And the other thing too is this is not sealed. So you could potentially, let's say you just don't like it. You say, oh, no, that didn't really work out the way I wanted. Well, all you do is you just get some rubbing alcohol when everything is dry, and you can actually just wash it away. It's that simple. Now this is a technique that I did for vehicles to get the, say you're doing the drive wheels or the tracks. Well, if you just brush this stuff on dry, it's really, well, it's practically impossible to get it down into the treads or the tracks where you want it to be. However, you do this, becomes basically a wash. Now it's easier. So what I'm going to do, now this is already dry. Look what we got here. Look at that. It's hard to paint that in, but now it almost looks a little bit like some kind of grout or whatever. So see here, and that's too bright. Now I just hit it with the dark earth. But look at that. We've completely changed. Look at, yeah, see, look at this base right here. Look at that. That's really fun. Now you could do that with paint. Secret Weapon paint would do that too. But I like the idea of the rubbing alcohol and the weathering powders because it becomes a wash that's really easy to remove should you not like it. So I'm just going to actually get this miniature out of the way here so I can get my brush down in here. And as you can see, a little bit of it has some punch. So, like I said, think of it how it's going to be dry, not how it looks now. Alright, let's keep going. I'm going to look and see now if the other one is dry enough to try some of these on, I will, but I don't think that's quite dry enough to be able to do this. But you see how it works at least. Now, look here. This is where the dark earth is. So I'm definitely doing this on the other one because this is really starting to add a lot. It's really starting to add a bunch. I'm going to get this guy out of here. He's just kind of trapped. There we go. And make sure you can see. I'm just going to get this touch of that in here, over here. This is another reason why I didn't go too crazy trying to paint the movement trays here, because I knew, you know what, if it's too bland, this is one way to get a little extra zazz in there. See, now these are all dark, these stones here, which means it's a really good candidate for this clay earth here. Basically this sort of pink type soil, and it's going to be really dark right now, but just give it a little bit and it won't be. So you can see we've got some nice staining here. Now let's say, like here, that's just too much pink. So I got my rubbing alcohol here. I could take one of these sponges. You've seen these before. See how I just removed it? So that's the nifty thing. See, I'm just going to take the sponge, dip it in alcohol, and better yet, now it leaves that stuff down in the crevices. So this is a different take on paint removal. Oh yeah, look at that. So that is really fun. Now the thing is, you sort of have to let it dry first before you do that. Here, let's spin this around. we got another candidate for that back here. Okay, you can see there's just like a hard brush stroke right here. We don't want that. Look what it leaves behind. That is really nifty. I didn't have these sponges before, so it's kind of neat now. Yeah, that's very fun. Here, let's do a bit here in the corner, and you see what I mean about the stuff drying pretty fast. I barely was applying this for 5 minutes, and it was bone dry in some places. So here, we'll just put this in here. Yeah, let's go a little more. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. Definitely said I would have never, if I just said, you know what, no, I already did that first unit a certain way. I'm not going to change it. I wouldn't have seen this and said, oh, I like this way better. So see how much I just took off of there? But it's still down in the crevices. Let's go back around so you can see what was removed. Here, let's do that again. See that little stone shows it again. See, we just freed up our painted stone there, but behind it now it looks sort of like grout or mortar, as the case may be. So this is sort of a fun back and forth thing, and you can see overall now how it's changed. Before the soil was pretty much just brown, dark brown, maybe grayish brown, but now in some places it's got a little more red. That's the dark earth. Yeah, so that was well worth it. Now, that's number 7. He goes back here. And that one's going to go here. So I'm really happy. And I hope that, like I said, just get a couple of weathering powders. Don't get a whole set of them. There's 34 at least in the secret weapon range alone. Don't run out and get 34 of them. Just like the contrast paints, get a couple. Get a few, see if you like them. If you do, then you can use it some more. And so I'm just going to try and get some of that dark earth in there. Again, I'm using it like a wash. And this sort of, you think capillary action? You think contrast paints have capillary action? Try rubbing alcohol. And then see, it's capillary action. It puts the contrast paints to shame. They practically have high tension compared to this stuff. Another reason why it makes it ideal for this, where it's sinking down into these crevices. And you don't have to use these colors. It could have used any of the, there's some tans here. Here, I'm going to grab you a couple. This is one that I like a lot. Is this the green earth one here? Sorry. There we go. Is this, oh, yellow earth. So again, this one's a little more tan. So we could use that if you want more of a desert type feel. So here, I'm going to try to get some of this, some of the dark earth in places where things turned a little bit too pink. And like I said, the hardest thing for you to get used to, at least at first, is this notion that it dries a whole lot later than it starts out. That'll be your challenge. But I think it's, like I said, I think it's definitely worth it. It is worth the trouble. Because it really adds something. See, it get over the leaves even. It sort of stains that leaf. That leaf, if it has any kind of a texture to it like veins, it's going to show up even more. So here so we're going to do the same thing over here with a sponge. Getting a little bit of the rubbing alcohol, and then we wipe some of that away. And see how that comes back now? Here, let's do it on a miniature. We're just going to wipe the excess away. See how the stone color comes back, But down in those crevices, pink is still there. Very nifty. Alright, I'm going to grab another sponge here. And I'm going to the same sort of clean, yeah, right there. Yeah. So the yellow now of the, that I painted in there, that comes back a little bit. But some of the weathering powder that I put in there, that goes away a little. I'm going to just do that in some places, so well worth it. Well worth the extra trouble. Yeah, look what that adds. It looks like there's not quite the amount of outlining in between them like there was. There we are. Yep, I'm going to do another little thing with my right in here. So thanks again. What I will do is I'm going to try and have a little gallery for you. I now have my little merry-go-round display thing, and I'm going to try and use that instead of just a bunch of still pictures, because I want you to see these things more alive. And I think that little rotating display platform is going to show these things more like they would look on the table as opposed to just still images. So that this will be pretty much the first video where I try that, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks again. I'll catch you on the next one. We're going to try and do something like this with the snow effects, because I got a bunch of free folk units and I want to try and use different materials. So the first one's going to be traditional crushed glass, doing the blood effects on top of that. Then the other units I'm going to play around with the GW stuff, the non-crushed glass methods, because I think these could have a lot of value to you, these experiments like this. So thanks again for watching. Thanks for the support on the Patreon page there. And like I said, you want to try the Army Painter Pledge level. Well, for one thing, if you're doing the basing or dark sword level, you'll get about another 50 videos, something like that, right off the bat. That's not too shabby, because there's essentially 10 Army series right now. But you'll get even more hints on the basing and how that applies to units and Army construction. So thanks again, and I'll catch you next on that snow video.